If you're brand new, I just want to welcome you. My name is Tim, the lead pastor here. It's such an honor to have you. And before we move forward, I wanted to take a moment and just say how much I did really enjoy that last series we did called Truly Happy, 10 weeks long, going through the Sermon on the Mount. And it gave me an opportunity. I had some travel and other things planned. So I want, before we move forward, to just say publicly thank you to all of our communicators that helped me with that series. I just want you to know I feel like we are so blessed as a church to have just great leaders and communicators, and so I just wanted to say thank you to them. I did get to do a little bit of traveling. In fact, my wife and I last week, or the week before really, we got to get away and get a little R&R. I guess go to some places that make us truly happy, especially my wife. I mean, the first few days we got to go just sit on a beach and it was beautiful. And then we did end up, as always seems to happen, at my wife's truly happy place, which if you don't know what that is, it's just a place where you go and give a lot of money to a mouse. That's where we went for a couple days. I don't know if you're getting to travel any this summer. I really hope that you do. I think summertime is a great time to kind of get away. Maybe you and your family get to rest, relax, and just take some time away and together. And I think it is so beautiful. And I don't know if you have a road trip planned, whatever traveling you're doing. Here's what I've found though, when I think about my own life and I think about people that I know. When it comes to traveling, I think there are two types of travel people. There's two types of people when it comes to travel. There's destination people and there's journey people. Let me explain. The destination people are those that can't wait till they get to the place where they're going. So much so they can't stand the trip to get there. They don't like the journey. They want to get there as fast as possible. They want to stop as little as possible. They are just like kind of feel trapped and stuck, and they almost can be kind of grumpy until they get to the destination. Any of you want to admit you're destination people? Raise your hand if you're a destination person. Okay, I'll raise two hands because that's me. I'm a destination person. I really am. And then there's the journey people. And the journey people, they're like, man, we get there today, that's fine. We get there tomorrow, that's cool. The journey people are the ones that love a good road trip. They fill it with blankets and pillows and Twizzlers, and they're just happy to be on the journey, and they don't care how many times they stop, even if it makes other people mad. And they'll say they have to pee every 2 hours just so they can get out and enjoy the scenery on the side of the road. And are there any journey people in this place? Raise your hand. Oh, okay. Okay, journey. Obviously, none of you guys drive. That's what I figured out. You're a journey person. You just get to sit with your feet up and watch movies on your phone. And if you didn't raise your hand at all, either A, you don't like to participate, or maybe you don't like to take trips. I don't know. But one of the things I've noticed being around the church, and I have most of my life, is that it tends in the church environment, I don't know, it tends to kind of only be what I would say is destination language. Or often, that's all you hear when you're around the church. Destination language. What I mean, a lot of times there's this sense that I've gotten being around the church that everybody almost is miserable on this journey called life, and the only thing that matters is getting to heaven. Like we just got to suffer through this. I know there's a lot of pain in this world. I really do. But around the church, I feel like there's kind of this emphasis on destination. Like it's all about getting to heaven. And listen, trust me, I'm pretty excited about that thought too. But you can tell in some of the language we use, the songs, some of the old classic songs, soon and very soon, we are going to see does anybody know that one? The King, right? Or there's another old one that just made me think of, I'll fly away. I just want to fly away from this place. Get me out of here. Heaven can't come soon enough. Man, I cannot wait for Jesus to come back and get us out of here so that he can just wipe out the rest of this place, get rid of all the problem people. I kind of just get this sense, this vibe in the church. We're super destination-oriented people. And it almost seems like there's, in some environments, not all, I get that, but in some church environments, maybe this has been your case growing up, it seems like there's a little bit of an obsession with the end. Kind of an obsession in the church with the end of the age or the end of the world as we know it. And there's, can I just say, there's some leaders who are obsessed with biblical prophecy. Now, I believe in biblical prophecy. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying there's some environments where they're so obsessed with it that whenever anything happens in our world, one little thing, they're like, that's it. He's coming back tomorrow, today, any day. We don't know, but it's really soon. And there's this anticipation and expectation and kind of a bit of a sense of urgency. Now, I think it's good to have urgency. I really do. I'm excited about the future, and I have hope about how amazing being with God is going to be, and not all the pain and suffering of the world. So don't get me wrong. I'm excited about that possibility. And I think that sometimes we need more urgency, if I could be honest. Sometimes I need more urgency in life. But can I say it this way? I don't think we need more urgency to get out of here. I think we need more urgency to engage in the journey that's right here. Can I say it that way? Like, I think that sometimes we can be so destination oriented, and I'm speaking to maybe people who are followers of Jesus that have been around the church. We're so focused on the end that we actually lose the value of the journey. Can I say it this way? We actually have only been given one life to live here. And it is a gift. And it's important. And it matters. And I just wonder if maybe the road trip we're all on around the sun matters more than we realize. What if it's not all about, hold on, and it's terrible, and one day we're gonna get out of here, and then it'll be amazing. But what if the whole idea of Jesus coming here wasn't just to say, here's how to get out of here, but it was also to bring his presence to here. See, I think that there's something that we are called to do until heaven. And that's what I want to talk about for the next few weeks. Let me just say, I did not have this particular topic, this series, on the radar. A couple months ago, I just felt all of a sudden like God impressed upon me that I need to change some things and we need to talk about this. There's something maybe for our church in this season that, I don't know, I just got a sense that maybe we're supposed to talk about and maybe refocus so that we don't get so caught up in this idea, I just can't wait to get out of here, and miss the value of what God wants us to do here and now. Eternity doesn't start when you die if you're a follower of Jesus. Eternity is right now. We're living in it. And so here's what I would say. I believe this series is going to be really important for our church. So if you're a part of this church in any way, shape, or form, can I just strongly encourage you, ask you, invite you to, as much as you can, make it a priority to be here for the next 5 weeks. And I understand, maybe you got a road trip of your own plan. That's awesome. I hope you get to go and enjoy, have fun time with your family, whatever that looks like. We have live stream. If you want to hit that, you can watch it later. But what God has put on my heart, I think is so incredibly important for all of us as a community, is we really talk about why has God called us as a church to be a church now? What does God want us to do until heaven? Let's not just dream about the day when we can leave this place, but let's actually ask, God, what do you want us to do today? So it's going to be a really important next few weeks. And today what I want to do, just to kick it off, is I want us to kind of, try to wrestle with a question that I was thinking about. I wanted to ask this question: does the church matter? Is the church like some extracurricular activity that God has given us just to bide time until we end up in eternity with God in heaven? Like, is that what the church is? I want to ask the question, does the church matter? And if it does, what does that mean for us? And so if you have a Bible with you, I'd love to invite you to go ahead and get it out, or if you use your electronic device, if you follow along through our app with the message notes, I encourage you, you can feel free to do that. I want to ask you to open up to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10 is a moment where Jesus kind of does a trial run for the church that we're a part of. There's this kind of like he's testing things out before, he's going to hand the keys over to us. And so in Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 1, are you there? Okay, that wasn't very clear. Are you there? Are you there? Okay. Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 1. We're going to look at 12 verses. Let's dive in. It says this: after this, the Lord appointed 72 others, and he sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place where he was about to go. Now pause for just a moment. We're going to get to the other verses, but whenever I'm reading the Bible, and you should try this, and you see like something like the word therefore, we talked about that last series, or you see something like after this, you should always pause and ask the question, after what? Like, what's he talking about? Because context really does matter. And it kind of can texture what you're reading. And so I want to give you a little bit of the context right before this moment you find in Luke chapter 9. There's a really important verse that Luke gives us, something that Jesus said. It's really critical. In Luke chapter 9, I'll read this one verse, verse 51. It says, as the time approached for him, that's Jesus, to be taken up to where? Heaven. Okay, so this is leading up to Jesus' time of, he's going to be gone. It says that Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. Here's what this means. There came a time after Jesus had walked on the earth for a while, his journey here, he realized, okay, my time is about up. He knew. He's the Son of God. He knew. His purpose was ultimately to end up in Jerusalem, and he knew that he was going to be arrested, he was going to be beaten, whipped, and brutally murdered. And he was going to let it happen. Let me tell you why he was going to let it happen. Because that was his mission. His purpose was to give his life for all of humanity. And so Jesus, knowing this, Luke says he set out resolutely for Jerusalem. Now, Jesus had done most of his ministry in an area called Galilee, which was north of Jerusalem. But he needed to go to this moment, this epicenter of faith that was going to happen of Judaism, which was in Jerusalem. So he says, we're going to go, guys. And the context, when we read in verse 1, is it wasn't just Jesus and his 12, but it was maybe even more than that. There was 72, at least others that were with him. And so before they get ready to leave, Luke tells us that Jesus takes a couple guys and he says, hey, I'm going to send you guys out. Go to this particular Samaritan village, and I want you to go and make preparations for us. I want you to go there. Now, again, if it wasn't just Jesus and 12, it could have been 72, could have been more than that. I mean, imagine there was a big old caravan of people going. And so Jesus is like, I need you to go and check out and see if they have rooms in the hotel. I need you to go to find a place for us to stay. We're going to go camp out. We're going to take a little tour. So this is Jesus' plan. He sends these guys, and they go to a Samaritan town, and they kick them out. They tell them, they're like, we don't want you here. We don't want Jesus here. We don't want all of you here. There's no room in the inn. Jesus is used to hearing that, right? And so they come back and they tell Jesus, they don't want us. And here's what's really funny. 2 of Jesus' disciples, named James and John, they're brothers. In fact, we sometimes refer to them as sons of thunder. Some think because of this very moment. But James and John, they're kind of annoyed. They aren't wanted. Jesus isn't wanted. And they turned to Jesus and they said, hey, Jesus, you want us to call down fire from heaven and torch the town? We'll burn them all to a crisp. You want us to wipe out the town, Jesus? Now, I find this hilarious because, number one, I'm like, you guys can do that? You think you can do that? What is wrong with you guys, right? And Jesus just rebukes them. He was like, idiots, stop. You don't know what you're doing, okay? Puts them in timeout. And he was like, you have the wrong heart, okay? That's what happens right before we get here. So then Jesus, he takes 72 others and he sends them out in groups of two in pairs to all these Samaritan and Jewish towns and villages, every place he's about to go. And then this is what happens. Look with me at verse 2. He told them, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Verse 3 begins with a command. What is it? Everybody say it out loud. It's go. I'm sending you out like lambs among wolves. Do not take a purse or bag or sandals, and do not greet anyone on the road. I mean, that's a little rude, isn't it, Jesus? I mean, like, don't even wave, don't stop, no chit chat. He says, you just go. It says, when you enter a house, first say, peace to this house. And if someone who promotes peace is there, your peace will rest on them. If not, it will return to you. Stay there, eating and drinking whatever they give you, for the worker deserves his wages. Now, I don't know if any of you are picky eaters like I am, but I would struggle with this. Like, I don't want to eat that. Like, he's like, go and eat whatever they put in front of you. And then he says, do not move around from house to house. When you enter a town and are welcomed, eat whatever is offered to you. Heal the sick who are there and tell them the kingdom of God has come near to you. But when you enter a town and are not welcomed, burn it to the ground. No, that's if we let James and John write this. But Jesus said, go into its streets and say, even the dust of your town we wipe from our feet as a warning to you. In other words, we're washing our hands. Yet be sure of this, the kingdom of God has come near. I tell you, it will be more bearable on that day for Sodom than from that town. Okay, what I think we're reading is kind of the soft launch for the church. I think this was Jesus doing a trial run. I mean, because before he's going to hand it over completely, I think he wants to see what they're going to do and how they're going to react. And so Jesus, not just his 12, because he had done that before. In fact, you could read in the Bible, he did that with the 12 before this. Now he takes 72 others. He's expanding it. And he sends them out. And I think what we're actually seeing, believe it or not, is a precursor for the local church. And what I see here is almost a model that he gives for the local church. He says, I'm going to send you out, launch teams. We're going to split you up. We're going to send you out 2 by 2 to all these different towns. And you're going to go there, and I want you to get planted there. Okay, if they welcome you, I want you to stay there, just kind of rest in that place and prepare the way for me to show up. Can I just tell you, I believe that's what the church is called to do. That we're called to do as the ones who carry the presence of Jesus today in our world, is that we're called to go into communities and towns and to be planted in those towns so that we can bring the very presence of Jesus to these cities. I think that's what we're called to do. And it's almost like Jesus, what he was doing is he's trying to bring into focus the most important reasons a church should exist. So what are they? Well, when I'm reading this, there's 3 things that stand out to me. I think there could be more, but for sake of this, I think there's 3 things that I see that Jesus sends them out that I believe he has sent us as the church today. You know, we're connected to that same church that he launched 2,000 years ago, that he sent them out to do. The first one, if you're taking notes, which I encourage you to take notes. I heard someone say once that they really believe that note takers in church actually get a fast pass in heaven, and there's a shorter line. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true. But just in case, you should take notes. Okay, the first thing I really see in this for the church is I believe that we're called to carry hope for the lost. We're called to carry hope for the lost. Why do I say that? Because Jesus talks about a harvest. The first thing when he sends them out, he says, hey, everybody, I need you to see this. The harvest is huge. I'm sending you out, and there's a massive harvest to bring in, but the workers are few. Now, for us, I think we kind of, maybe you don't have a garden, maybe you don't farm. if you're not agricultural, most of them agricultural, they would have instantly known what Jesus was talking about. They would have known that whenever there's harvest season, that there is a little window that you have to bring in all of the crops. And if you don't get the crops in time, then you're gonna lose some of them, which is why Jesus says that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And so you need to ask the Lord of the harvest to send more workers because the challenge is so big. Now, you need to know this. Jesus is not talking about soybean. He's not talking about corn. He's not talking about wheat. What he's talking about are people who are spiritually lost without God. When he's talking about a harvest, he's talking about there's a window that we need to have a sense of urgency because there are people all around us who are wandering through life and they don't know if God's real. They don't know if God cares about them. They don't know if they're just a cosmic accident. They don't have any intrinsic value. Maybe they're not even sure what they're supposed to be doing with their life. They have no purpose or meaning in life and they're wandering through life spiritually lost, and Jesus is like, go, I'm sending you. So some of you follow Jesus today. Many of you. Maybe for a long time. So can I ask you a question? Maybe especially if you followed Jesus for a long time. Do you remember a time back when you were spiritually lost? Like, do you remember a time? Because I remember a time in a season when I was spiritually lost. And I grew up around the church. I grew up going to church every single weekend. I grew up going to a Christian school. And yet that didn't matter. I was still spiritually lost. And I remember decisions that I were making that were destructive. I remember the path that I was going down, which was not a good path, and it was not going to lead to good results. I remember wondering if I mattered. I remember wondering, what's the point of life? Do some of you remember what it was like when you were spiritually lost? Anybody? Can I just tell you though, I am so grateful for the local church because it was in the local church that I was actually introduced to the grace of Jesus and a God who loved me in spite of all the things that I have done in my life, who offered me forgiveness if I would just come to him and I just confess what I've done. Can I just tell you, it was in the local church that I experienced the grace of God. It was in the local church that I discovered that there's a purpose for my life and that I'm not a cosmic accident and that God actually intended for me, Tim, to live here right now in this time and space of history. It was in the local church that I received a calling to give my life to Jesus, to follow him, to serve him, to pursue what God had called and created me to do. All of that happened in the local church for me. What about you? What about you? Like this idea of being sent out. There's a window. It's a harvest. And there's a sense of urgency in Jesus's language. Go, exclamation point. There's not a lot of time. Can I just tell you, I own this myself. There are a lot of seasons in my life where I've just gotten really lackadaisical, where I'm just going through the motions. That I've maybe lost a sense of urgency, but I think we need to get it back. I think that God's called us to be on mission. Maybe that's why he said to him, when you're on the road, don't let anybody distract you. Don't stop and talk and small talk and conversations because I'm sending you with a mission and there is an urgency to reach the world. Hello? Church, do you hear me? There's an urgency to reach your neighbors. There's an urgency to reach family members and friends and neighbors and coworkers. There's an absolute urgency. And I know some of us, you're probably sitting there going, I know, I've heard all about this, and there's gonna be the end one day, but it's been 2,000 years and Jesus still hasn't come back. Maybe the urgency isn't about Jesus coming back. Maybe the urgency is about how many breaths you and I have on this earth. Because we don't know. Can I just say this, like, as much as I think all of us imagine and dream our lives and what they'll be and how long, and tomorrow is not guaranteed to any of us. I mean, is there anything more sobering than waking up to the news of a flash flood that's killed over 50 people in Texas this weekend? Many of them kids, girls, who are at a Christian camp. And I think about moms and dads who sent their young girls to a Christian camp to hopefully learn about Jesus. And then all of a sudden, they're gone. Like we can go through life thinking we have forever. We don't. I don't know. I might live 30, 40 more years. I might live 30 hours. I don't know. And I'm not saying that because I think some environments, like they want to use it as fear, so you better get right so you don't get left. And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there ought to be a sense of urgency about our lives. When Jesus looked at them and sent them out, what did he say? He said to them, go, I'm sending you. And he said, where I'm sending you, it's not gonna be always nice. I'm gonna send you out like lambs among wolves. Like, in other words, they're not gonna all like you and what you represent and who you represent. And they're not all gonna want you. They're not all gonna be so happy to hear the hope that you have in you. They're not gonna be just overjoyed that you're there and the message, but I'm sending you out because we need to have a sense of urgency. Can I tell you what he did not call us to do? To come and sit. And I think, if I'm being real honest, I think that a lot of us can engage in a version of cultural Christianity where we like to show up at church and maybe it makes us feel a little good and the music's good and they got something good for my kids, but that's it. If I can get there. If you're a follower of Jesus, that's not what he called. He didn't call you to come and sit. He said, go. I'm sending you. There's a sense of urgency that we're called as a church to carry. The second thing that I think we're called to carry, and that is healing for the hurting. I think the church, and if you're a follower of Jesus, I think that you are called to bring healing to the hurting. In verse 9, Jesus looked at him and he said, heal the sick. When you see people who are diseased, you see people who are struggling, you see people who are hurting, you see people that are sick, you know what I want you to do? I want you to go heal them. I'm giving you my authority to go and pray for them. I'm giving you a power so that you can go and actually bring healing to the hurting. Can I tell you, I think that's what the church is called to do. I think that we have a mandate by God to minister to people who are hurting in our communities, in our neighborhoods, at work, in our families. I believe there's a mandate for it. That we're called to heal. What does that mean? I don't mean like faith healers and all that. But I do believe that he's given us his spirit. I believe when Jesus said you'll be filled with the Spirit and you'll have power to be my witnesses. You know what Jesus did when he went to towns? People that are hurting and broken, he touched and he healed them. I think that's what we're called to do. I think the church operates in healing in a couple different levels. One is supernatural and one in the natural. Let me say it this way. In a supernatural way, I believe that God does miracles. I'll say it again. I believe God does miracles today. I don't believe that Jesus just did miracle 2,000 years ago. But when I read about the church in the book of Acts, I see Peter and John like right away afterwards healing a man who was lame, who couldn't walk, set by this gate called Beautiful, and in one word said in the name of Jesus, get up and walk, and he did. Can I just say, I believe that God does miracles. That wasn't 2,000 years ago. Can I say, I believe God still does miracles today. I believe that God still heals today. You know why? Because I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen God heal people of diseases. I've seen God heal people of sickness. I've seen God heal people of mental health. I've seen God heal people of infertility. I've seen God heal people of cancer. That when the doctor said there's nothing we can do, I've actually seen and heard witness of God healing people in our own community, in our own backyard, who had cancer and were given a diagnosis that you're not gonna make it. They're still alive today. Can I tell you, I think God does miracles. Hello? Come on. That means God could bring healing to your life. and he'll do it, I believe, in the context of the church. There's healing in the supernatural. And I understand sometimes I pray for people and God doesn't heal them the way I hope he does. Sometimes God has other plans. But I want to believe in faith every single time someone asks me for prayer that God's going to touch and heal them. But I also see that the church has been the primary agent of healing for the last 2,000 years in our world on all levels, including in a natural sense. Do you know that most of the hospitals in our country today were founded by faith-based organizations and churches? In Central Ohio, there's 21 major hospitals that are all faith-based. And most of the time you wouldn't even think about it that way. Mount Carmel, St. Anne's, Riverside, Grant, Doctors West, these are just a few of them. Did you know these are faith-based organizations? Did you know that it was out of faith-based organizations that come out of the church that most of the hospitals we have today got started? Did you know medicine is what it is today because of people of faith? It's so funny to me that you often get this argument of science and faith, and people of science, they don't, we don't live in a fairy tale world. We just have facts, and that we have science to thank for all of the advancements in medicine. No, actually, we have people of faith to thank for most of the advancements in medicine. Because what actually initiated a modern movement of science and faith, or science and medicine, was people of faith. Like people like Robert Boyle, who's known as the father of modern chemistry. Did you know that he was a deeply spiritual man who believed in doing mission work and missionary work? And it was that mandate that actually led him to create what he did create and what's happened even since then. I think about scientists like Isaac Newton. Everybody thinks of Isaac Newton, we think of physics. Right? We think Newtonian physics and everything that he created. And do you know that Isaac Newton actually wrote more about theology than he did physics? Or how about Florence Nightingale? You ever heard of her? She is credited for the founder of modern day nursing. And she was such a deep spiritual person. The reason why she even began that is because she felt a moral mandate from God to bring healing to people who are hurting. What I'm saying is, it's not the atheists that actually have led the way. It's people who had a mandate from God to bring healing into our world that have led the way for it. And I'm not just talking about physical healing. On top of that, there's brokenness in our communities. There's brokenness in families, brokenness, people with addiction, brokenness in marriages, brokenness in relationships with their children. And the church leads the way for bringing healing in those situations. Can I just say it this way? I think the church, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, we're mandated to bring healing for the hurting, hope for the lost, healing for the hurting, and the third one is this: peace for the city. Peace for the city. One of the things Jesus told them was, he said, when you go to a town and they welcome you with peace, let your peace rest on them. In other words, they were carrying something that those houses needed, that town needed. He said, when you go there, he said, let your peace rest on that city. There's something that they were carrying with them. There was a peace. Can I just tell you where peace comes from? It doesn't come from a lack of trouble, because we all have trouble, but peace comes from the very real presence of God with you. When God says, even though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, fear no evil because I'm with you. Peace comes from the presence of God. And can I just tell you that this world would look a whole lot different if the church did not exist. When a church shows up, the people of the church bring peace to that community. Something changes in that community because there's an advocate for hope. There's somebody who cares about doing good. There's somebody who brings light into a dark place. In fact, that's what we as a church are going to be doing in a week's time from now when we get together for XO Week. right? XO Week is a 1 week a year where our focus is we're gonna go outside the walls of this church and we'll use this building to actually bring hope to the community that we're inside. And we're gonna pack meals, thousands of meals for people who are hungry. And we're gonna serve our community and those in the area who are in the greatest need. We're gonna serve them. And we're gonna make cards of encouragement and care for prisons and for people that are in places where they're destitute. We are gonna come and serve our city. And can I just tell you, whenever a church does things like that, it brings peace to that community. It brings the presence of God to that community. Because church, listen to me, we embody the presence of Jesus wherever we go. And I think that if you were to take the church away, just remove the church from a community, remove the church from our world. Can I just tell you, I think it would be a really dark place. I think it'd be dark. I don't think we sometimes realize the impact of the spiritual forces in our world today. Flip on the news and you'll quickly see the evil exists. Now, if you just imagine, remove the primary bearers of light and hope, who, by the way, run into disasters to bring care. Remove the church, and I'm just telling you, this place becomes hell on earth overnight. The darkness runs rampant because, listen to me, we carry his presence. We, the church, carry the presence of God in this place. And can I just say this? The church isn't a building. This building is great. But how many of you know we were a church before we were in this building? This is just a building. If it blows up tomorrow, guess what? We'll still be a church. We're gonna still do XO Week, okay? Like the church is not, when I say a church shows up in a community, it brings the peace of God. I'm not talking about a building on a street corner. I'm talking about you and me, the real church. Because we're the real church, and wherever the church shows up, the presence of God shows up, and the peace of God can invade a city, a town, a community, because the presence of God showed up through the church. You carry his presence. You know what that means? That means when you go to work tomorrow, you carry the presence of God there. In your neighborhood, you carry the presence of God there. I had someone tell me, they were talking, they used to work at this place and then they left, and they told me that they were talking to someone who was still there, and that person said, you know, ever since you left, this place hasn't been the same. And I know they have a great personality, but I don't think that's it. I think they actually were someone who carried the presence of God and peace of God into that place. I think we're called to do that. If you ask me if the church matters, I say it matters more than we ever even realized. It's not perfect. The church is messed up so many times because it's full of imperfect people and imperfect pastors. And I know so many people like to hate on the church, but I'm just telling you, you pulled the church out of the world. And I don't even want to imagine what it would look like. I really don't. Now, as I begin to close, I felt like I wanted to also speak to those that maybe you're just not really sure about God. You're not sure about the church. Maybe you came here today and it's like, man, I come every once in a while, but I'm not really sure if it's worth my time and energy to fully invest and immerse in the local church. What I want to do quickly is I want to just give you 5 reasons that I want to say to be active in a church, not to come and sit, but to engage, to serve one another, be part of XO Week, maybe join a circle, just be part of the life of the church, giving to all the things that we're trying to do as a community, be part of it, active. Can I give you 5 reasons? Maybe if you're here and you're like, I don't believe in God, atheist, agnostic, I don't care. I'm gonna give you 5 reasons you should just be a part of the church, even if you don't believe in God. The first one, it'll improve your physical health. Did you know that? It'll actually improve your physical health, being a part of the church. I'm not just making that up, some preacher stat, but there's been studies that have been done about the effect of actually attending church regularly and consistently. And one of the things they discovered is that it boosts your immune system, that it lowers your blood pressure. You ever go to church and you're just so stressed and you're not sure about life, and there's just something about showing up in an atmosphere like this on a day like today, and you just sense the presence of God, and all of a sudden everything just begins to get calmer on the inside? Have you ever just showed up at church and it's changed your perspective about life? It's given you hope for tomorrow. There's physical benefits. So even if you don't believe in God, there's a massive physical benefit of coming to church. In fact, there was a national study that was done by The Ohio State University. Let me just say it, that's not a faith-based organization. I mean, it is the largest church in the state of Ohio that worships on Saturdays in the fall. Don't get me wrong. But The Ohio State University actually did this survey, this study, where they took, I know this sounds morbid, but obituaries across the country of, I think it was 1,500 plus people. And they wanted to find out about longevity and age. And guess what they found out? Of those people, the ones who actively went to church on a weekly basis and were engaged in the community, you know what they discovered when they compared them all? They lived on average 4 years longer than those who didn't. So literally, you don't have to believe in God. Going to church can add time to your life. If you don't believe me, I'll do a real quick math, okay? Let's say you go to church for 2 hours a week for 70 years of your life. That's about 7,300 hours, close to a year, 304 days or something. I did the math, but like it's almost a year, 300 plus days of being in a church. You're like, I don't know if I really want to go to church because I could get up and mow my grass. I could sleep in. I could, I got things I could do around the house. I could rest a little bit more. Maybe that's better for my body than actually getting up early and going to church or serving. Okay, 7,300 hours that you lose by going to church. Granted, I'll give you that. But if these studies are correct and it adds a minimum of 4 years to your life, if you do the math and subtract the 7,300 hours, that actually means you're up 27,764 hours. That's over 3 years. You just gain time by going to church. So physical health, great reason to be active in a church. Second one is your mental health. Your mental health. Studies, again, continue to show that people who are actively involved in a church, they're more optimistic about life. They have lower depression rates, lower suicide rates for those who are actually engaged. I'm not talking about, I believe in God. No. I'm talking about actively involved in a church. In fact, there was one study that I came across. It was a major national study that said of women were 5 times less likely to commit suicide if they went to church regularly. And by the way, of all of the groups who went through COVID, only one group in America actually said their mental health improved during COVID. Can you guess which one? The group of people that went to church every single week. You don't think it matters? It matters. Your emotional. Here's another one, addiction assistance. There are so many people trapped in addictions that are ruining their lives. My guess is many of you wrestle with it, or you know someone who does. It'll destroy your life. Guess who leads the charge on helping people break free of addiction? The church and faith-based organizations that have come from the church. Like organizations, say, Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. I know they talk about a higher power. That's not a Christian. Do you know they do that so they can reach more people? But the 2 guys who started AA, one guy, both of them were alcoholics. One of the guys talks so much, the guy who helped write the 12 steps, he had a spiritual encounter that helped him break free of addiction. If you want to know where AA came from, I'm going to tell you where. It came from the church. Do you know there's over 2 million people worldwide that are involved in Alcoholics Anonymous today? that are finding hope and walking out that process because there's some people that had a spiritual encounter with God. Did you know in our church we have 3 different groups to help people who are wrestling with addiction, whether it's chemical addiction, family members, porn addiction? Did you know that happens in our church? Because that's where it happens, in the church. Let me give you a 4th reason I believe so much. There's no other entity on the planet that is addressing social and societal problems like the church. The church. There's no other organization that's actually trying to deal with the ills of our society more than the church does. In fact, I wrote this down. When it comes to the church and the organizations that it started, let me just say this. When it comes to generosity and volunteerism, people who give money and serve their time to help others, it happens primarily through the church and faith-based organizations. 70% of all charitable giving happens through the church. The church and other faith-based organizations do more to address foster care, human trafficking, prison reform, hunger, homelessness, and natural disasters, just to name a few. And let me just tell you something about our church. Our church engages in all of those. We give money to support organizations who do that, and we volunteer in every single one of those organizations. Did you know that? We're serving right now in 10 prisons across the state of Ohio, taking hope to prisoners that our society just threw away. We are currently, there's many of you who do it. When you give, you enable us to go do those kind of things. Did you know when it comes to foster care, the last couple Christmases, we've been given thousands and thousands of dollars to give gift cards so foster kids, teen foster kids around the state would know that someone cares about them. Do you know when it comes to human trafficking, we support organizations that are helping women who are caught in human trafficking get out and establish their life, and many of you actually serve with those organizations? Do you know whenever there's a natural disaster that we have teams of people from our church who give up their own time to travel and actually help do natural disaster relief? I'm saying this happens in your church. That's why I think the church matters. I'll give you a 5th one, relationships and family. There's no one else that cares as much about relationships and family as much as the church does. And that is the building block for all of society. And the Bible teaches inclusion, acceptance, and the clearest message about forgiveness. Guess what you won't find outside of the church? You won't find anybody who champions the idea of forgiveness. And let me tell you, as someone who needs forgiveness, I'm so grateful that there is a place and a message of forgiveness. That God forgives us because we're all mess. And if it weren't for God's grace, I'd still be a mess. I'm so grateful that there's someone that told me that God doesn't care what I did yesterday. He still loves me and wants me today. And I can come to him and he will forgive me of what I've done, and I can begin a new clean slate. Can I just tell you, who else? Where are you going to get that message that actually keep families together? You know, they say the divorce rate is near 50%. That might be true in our society. Let me tell you this, it's not true with another category. And some people go, no, it's just as bad in the church. Well, it's because there's a lot of people who come and show up every once in a while. But did you know that they did a study that those who attend church regularly and spouses that pray together, the likelihood of divorce drops to single digits? You don't think it matters? Come on, the church matters. Is it perfect? No. Has it made a lot of mistakes? Yes. But please listen, the church matters. I think about what the world would look like without the church. I don't even want to know. And so I don't want to live my life going, I just can't wait to get out of here, when maybe what really matters to God is that he has positioned and he's sending us into communities to bring hope to the lost and healing for the hurting and to bring peace into those regions, those areas. That's what I think he's called us to do, church. Why don't you stand to your feet if you would? I really want to encourage you. This has been heavy on my heart for a good reason. I think God wants to set our focus If you're a follower of Jesus, he wants to set your focus. Say, hey, don't get distracted. Stay focused on what I've created you to do, the purpose that I have for you. Stay focused. And I believe all of those things, that's what we're here for as a church. And so would you just bow your heads, maybe close your eyes for a moment? Can we just have a moment? I just really sense the presence of God is here today. If you're here and you do not know him, maybe when I talk about being spiritually lost, that's you today. Maybe you feel spiritually lost. Can I just tell you, there is hope, and his name is Jesus. He died for you. That was the purpose why he came, so that you could experience eternal life. I just want you to know you can receive that today. If that's your desire, if that's you saying today, I need to be forgiven of my sin, I want to experience hope in him. I just want to invite you just to say a simple prayer. You say, Jesus, today I surrender my life to you. I invite you into my life. I think you died for me. But today I want direction and purpose, and I want you to be the Lord of my life.
Thanks so much for tuning into this message. I hope that it encouraged you and inspired your faith. If God is doing something in your life, would you take a moment and let us know? We want to connect with you, and we want to be able to pray for you. All you have to do is shoot us an email to hello@thex.church, or you can always send us a DM on one of our social media platforms. And if you know somebody that would also be encouraged by this very message, why not take a moment and just share it with them right now? And as always, I want to say thank you to every single person who so generously financially supports this ministry, so we can continue to get messages like these out to people all over the world. We believe God is building something special, and you're a significant part of it. Until next time, have a great day.